Hi, everyone. I am so excited because I am speaking with author James Markert, and we are talking about his brand new book, just came out a couple of days ago, called Midnight at the Tuscany Hotel. Thank you so much for talking with me.
That's my pleasure. Glad to be back. I think, what is this, our third chat? Okay.
Yeah, third. I was like, is it third or fourth? I think third.
Yeah, but we're on a first-name basis now.
We are.
I'm not giving you my middle name, though. I'll tell you.
Okay. Oh, my gosh. But, James, you know why we keep talking? Because I keep loving your book so much. You come out with a book, and I know. I'm like, oh, my God, I can't wait to read it. Because I love your writing so much.
Thank you.
Much. And while I'm reading it, I'm like giving you applause. I'm like, oh my God, that was awesome. Oh my God. I like talking to you while I'm reading your book.
I can hear you.
You can hear me. And this one, I know I said this about the last one, but I love this book so much. And I kept thinking, while I was reading it, I'm like, how did he think of this? You blew me away with this book.
Well, thank you. It wasn't easy. It took a lot of brain power. It didn't take me too long to write. I guess I wrote it in about 5-6 months. But I did have to kind of start and go halfway through, and then really take a month to think about what I was doing with it. And I had a lot of help from editor Kim at Thomas Nelson too. So, but eventually it all made sense to me, and I was able to finish it pretty quickly after that.
I think that the detail, your books are always very spiritual, okay? Mm-hmm. But the detail in this book was what just kept blowing me away, okay? So I'm going to let you talk about it. I'm going to give your little, because I don't even know how far to take this, because I don't want to give anything away, so I want to hear what you have to say about it.
Well, like a lot of my novels, I don't really know exactly when the idea came to me. I think years ago I had the idea of just after seeing a mosaic fountain of a fountain water restoring memory, but that was it. And maybe I just sat on it for a few years until started researching Tuscany for something else, and I just started imagining. I guess the hotel. Once I thought of the hotel is when the story kind of started to come together. And the hotel itself, the Tuscany Hotel, was built in the late 1800s, and its heyday was early 1900s, and during the Roaring 20s. The person who built the hotel was Robert Gandy. He was a famous sculptor, and he built it for his wife, Magdalena, who he helped escape Tuscany back in the late 1800s. But it's kind of the hotel was a haven for artists. And when I say artists, I don't mean just, art. I'm talking musicians, actors, artists like sculptors, painters, what have you. It was a place for them to all go and create. They could leave their worries behind and they would stay there and create. And each room in the hotel has its own little fingerprint of, whether the walls are painted or the ceiling, or each room is known not by a number, but by the color of the door and whatever artwork inside it. So that when you walk into the main piazza in the hotel and you look around, it's like a color wheel, all the doors. And then the hotel closes because of tragedy, and it's closed for 6 years. And the main character in the book, I guess, is Vittorio Gandy, who comes back from the war. He's Robert's son. Robert is the one who built the hotel. But Vittorio comes back from the war, and when he left the war, his son was pretty young, and the son no longer doesn't know who he is when he returns. And then the father comes out the door, and he learns that Robert now has Alzheimer's, so his dad doesn't know who he is either. And then mixed with all that, Vittorio is struggling with post-traumatic, from the war, which back then they called combat exhaustion. So to make a long story short, they all end up going back to the hotel, and Robert Gandy sneaks off there one night, and the fountain's running again, and he drinks from it, and his memory comes back. So instead of artists, the hotel starts filling up with Alzheimer's patients. But not the water isn't everything it seems. So without giving too much away.
But that's what I love about your books, because it's like you always have kind of a healing. Like there's some kind of healing that happens,
right.
A magical healing, I want to say, I guess, in your books. And this one is about memory. And
yes.
I love that. I was like, wow, how did he think of this? This is crazy. Because like I said, everybody, the detail, okay?
Right.
Like, did you, I don't know, when you walk in, like when you're writing this, when you're describing the hotel, like do you have pictures? Did you like draw stuff so you knew what you were doing while describing it?
I did. I'm not an artist. I come from a family of artists. My father has made stained glass windows for huge churches and hospitals for 40 years, and he's also a sculptor. And so I was inspired by him and my upbringing. My brother's a sculptor major, and my sister's a pianist. And but I did try my hand at art briefly, and I drew the Tuscany Hotel on some graph paper, exactly what I thought, from an aerial view, what it would look like. It's shaped in a square, and the inside of it's hollowed out into one big courtyard piazza with a fountain in the middle. So I did draw out that, and I drew where the poppy field was, the vineyard, the olive grove, the ocean. So I drew all of that out so I would have kind of a map, more than just in my head.
Right, because that would be so hard to be able to describe it in the detail. And everybody's looking at this book cover while we speak, okay?
Isn't it great?
So yeah, because as I'm reading it, and I have it on digital, but I kept going back because I was like, wow, you have the mosaic, you've got the poppies on here, you've got the clock, you know, all these things are so important as you're reading, as I'm reading it, I'm like picking out the different elements in this book cover. I just feel like they nailed it, right?
I agree. And I think they nailed it from the get-go. My one recommendation that they end up putting on there was the clock.
Okay.
I did say I want the clock on there somewhere. So, because midnight is very, very important to the book for many reasons, and it's in the title. But I really, as far as the cover, you could see the little cracks in the mosaic. I think that's important too. When you talk about, cracks and healing and those type things.
Yes. And you start the book off, you start in 1946, okay? But then you go back to 1866 in Florence, Italy, with the birth of Magdalena and what happens to her. And which I love. It was just like I said, this whole spiritual theme just starts right there. And then you go into him coming home. And I love when you said that, because I was going to ask you about it when you said it in your introduction. The first thing that struck me about Vito was that and that's how you say that, right?
Yes.
Shortened. Is that it?
Honestly, I've never heard the name said, but
I know. I'm like, it's not Vito. It's not Vito. It's
well, if you say the whole name, it would be Vittorio.
I know.
But when you short it to Vito, it could almost sound like it has D's instead of T's.
Vito.
But Vito.
Vito. I don't know.
It's
That's
however
what I
you want
was
to say
hearing
it.
in my head. Vito.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, it could be my accent too. But I love that, so he comes home from the war and he decides, this isn't a spoiler because it happens right in the beginning, but, he decides to surprise his family. And I come from a military family. I have two sons who were in the military. I was in a military wife. So, I get all this. So I understand this really well. And because I've been surprised. And so, he wants this, great welcome home. And like you said, his son doesn't recognize him. And then his father, who he just idolizes, doesn't even know who he is. And I think it sets the tone for who he is throughout this book.
Right. And his path through the war, even though most of his mentioned past in the war is backstory or comes out in dialogue, we never have scenes of him from the war.
Right.
But his basic path through the war is modeled after my grandfather's. And that actually happened. My dad was, I believe, 1 or 2 when his dad went off to war, and when he came back, my grandma said, here's your dad's home, and my dad at like 3 years old said, that's not my dad. Not because he didn't recognize him, he didn't know who he was. So that I pulled that straight from life.
Yeah.
And and a lot of the little things that happened to him, I modeled after what my grandfather went through.
Yeah, and I'm not giving away any of those, the war, the flashbacks, but the one that I was reading like right before bed, I started crying. Like I'm getting ready to go to, and that's when I put the book down. I'm like, okay, I'm going to bed now. Like
right.
So, like you just got to me so much. Like it was so emotional. And then at the ending, like this morning, I'm reading the ending. It's like 7 a.m. and I'm crying reading the ending, and
right.
Like you just, I don't know. This one was so emotional for me, and
Well, I think it will be for a lot of people. Just with the whole post-traumatic stress. It's not a new thing.
It's not.
Yeah, and back at World War I, they would call it shell shock.
Right.
World War II, they called it combat exhaustion. So it's something that you may have not been in World War II, but it's things that people still experience. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. But also the whole Alzheimer's aspect. I think that a lot of people, and I've never had a personal. My grandfather, not the one that was in the war, he had dementia towards the end. I've never been in a situation where it's been a long-lasting relationship with someone who had to fight that. But I watched so many videos of Alzheimer's patients and how the family dealt with it, and a lot of that research went into it.
I wondered that because I not related to, but I do know some Alzheimer patients, and you nailed that part. So I was like, I wonder if he has had experience, in his family. But it didn't matter. Like you just totally nailed all the intricacies of it.
Right.
And
the whole the quality of life at the end, and
yes,
that's I wanted to touch upon that.
Yeah. Yes, and in your last book, it was about people coming to a place where they could reconnect with the ones who passed away. Okay, and then this is what I love about the central themes of your book. And then here is a hotel where people are coming to regain their memory. And
right.
Another thing is, I don't even want to get into too much, but Magdalena does have there's an element to her that is also very spiritual that has to do with memory. So
right.
I was wondering how did the memory thing come to you, that was going to be so important in this book?
Well, it first came with, I just thought of a hotel where the water and the fountain can restore memory. That just kind of popped to me. So I wanted memory to be a theme throughout. And then, so I thought of Vittorio, who ends up being someone who remembers everything. His memory is like a photograph. Which is why he struggles so much with his, combat exhaustion from the war. He can't stop seeing it.
Right.
So then I thought of creating a character who has no memory, in Magdalena, and how that, how to live with that, and how do you learn to love someone that you don't remember day to day. Different things like that, and in the whole memory, how the fountain water. I guess I'm not giving it away because it's on the back of the book, but
right.
the fountain water restores memory, but memory in itself can be a double-edged sword. It can hurt. Memories can hurt, but they can also heal. So I wanted to make sure I touched on that. So while the water for the patients was bringing back memories of their past that they wanted, like with Vittorio, it would bring back memories he didn't want. So I wanted to make sure I touched on both.
Right.
And little things like, he has memories that are so vivid. With him literally writing down his nightmares and burying them in the ground. Those little tidbits are just things that you come up with after several drafts. But
well, and that's exactly like in your last book, you explored, like, wouldn't we all like to, be connected with the people that we've loved that have passed on, but then the good and the bad, like I always knew going into this book, I was like, I just can't wait to see how he does this, because I know you and I know your writing, and and you did it beautifully. So, which leads me to the ultimate question is, like, what's next?
I don't know exactly. I have a historical thriller that my agent is pitching. That's 1890s Jekyll and Hyde theme. It's a little darker. She's also pitching a partial that I've written the first 50 pages of a novel called The Monster of Santovino that takes place in Tuscany during World War II. That I'm very excited about. And I'm also working on a contemporary, kind of a darker thriller. So I'm kind of juggling several books because I don't know exactly what's next. Because I guess I've written all my books for Thomas Nelson right now that were under contract. So I'm not totally sure exactly what's going to come out next.
Well, I can't wait.
Well, you mentioned my previous. You're talking about All Things Bright and Strange, the one before.
Yeah.
Did you not get What Blooms from Dust?
No, I did. I have that one too. Right.
Okay. The Dust Bowl.
Yes, the Dust Bowl.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Oh my God, I love that book. I have to
that.
bring it back up into my mind, and I'm like,
I enjoyed writing that one too. But this, they say it's hard to pick your favorite novel, but this one, Midnight, might be my favorite. I guess that's easy to say for your newest one all the time. But
I know, that's why I said whenever I'm talking to you, I'm like, no, this is my favorite, but I did love the last one so much. But then you remind me of the Dust Bowl. I'm like, oh my God, but that one was, I love your books. I love your writing. And so whatever you pick to do next, I know it's going to be amazing. And, I didn't even notice when I contacted you, I'm like, oh my God, this book is out already. Like it just, like it seemed like we just said it was coming out in a couple of months, and then here it is. So it came out very fast. Yeah.
Well, it's been 9 months. I guess that's pretty quick.
That is quick for most. Well, for most authors, that's very quick. So anyway, but I'm so happy that I read it, and I can't wait to see what you do next. And you know where to find me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think this is going to be a good book club. You think
so?
Yeah, I think it'll bring about good discussion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it would be a great book club pick. You could have a lot of, we just discussed it very, not trying to give anything away, but they could really dive into this one. So I highly recommend it. So I'm going to put the IndieBound link where you can go to your local bookstore to get the book. I'm going to put the Amazon link, and I will also put your website and all your social media links. Thank you so much, James, for talking with me, and I can't wait to do it again.
Yeah, thanks for reading it again. I'll talk anytime.
Yes, thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.